No. So, chapter 12, pivot tables and pivot charts. Learning objectives. After studying this chapter, you will be able to create pivot tables, modify and format pivot tables, apply a filter to a pivot table, insert a slicer to filter a pivot table, create a calculated field, and create pivot charts. So, creating pivot tables. These are used for summarizing complex information. Making a pivot table. Pivot tables are based on an entire range. You can insert a pivot table onto the same or separate worksheet. You can add fields from the row, column, and value areas of the pivot table. So, what is a pivot table? It's a combination of a table and outline plus some unique features. To pivot is to rotate, and pivot tables allow you to quickly search between different views. You can arrange the source data. Source data is raw data and isn't summarized in any way. Column headings appear across the top. Rows contain unique entries. No blank rows or columns or duplicate values are allowed. You remove duplicates. Use the remove duplicates command. You must specify which columns must match in order to remove those duplicates. So to add a pivot table field, the pivot table field pane allows you to add and remove fields easily. Select the field names to include in the table. Drag fields to choose the column headers. Drag fields to calculate. And drag fields to choose row headers. So that is a lot. But it makes working with Excel so much easier when you're trying to look at data. I think I showed you guys before what I had with my Verizon bill, where we had over 1,000 lines of data. I mean, truthfully, you're not looking at 1,000 lines of data just on a worksheet. Having a pivot table allows you to easily kind of sort and see what information you want to see. Who's using the most data? Who's using, international minutes? How much are we spending per department? Those pivot tables allow you to summarize and see it quickly by removing or adding the different columns to see what you're looking for. So, diving into this on page 296, we're going to go ahead and open up E12D1 cells. And of course, we're going to do our favorite thing. We're going to do our file save as. Go to browse, make sure you're in your thumb drive. And this is going to be E12D1 cells targets. So the first thing you're just going to do is scroll down and see And make sure there's no blank lines anywhere. So the data should end at row 93. So as long as you're in the right worksheet. Now, one of the best things to do is you want to scroll up. If you go to data, you can go over to remove duplicates. And that's under data tools. You can click on that. And basically here, you're able to select which fields do you want to search for that has the duplicates. Here, we're going to say we're going to leave all the columns selected. And we're going to click OK. And it says that we found 4 duplicates. And there's 86 unique values that remain. So we can go in and click OK to close that box. Okay. After that, we're going to go to Insert. And then we're going to hit Control I on your spreadsheet. So hold down the Control key. Oh, sorry, not I, the down arrow. Control and the down arrow. And that's going to take us down to the last row of the table. So you should be on number 89. Control and then the down arrow. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's just a learning game. Okay, so under Insert, we're going to go to Tables. So the subheading, and we're going to go to Pivot Table. So you should get this box that pops up. And we want to click on, make sure it says select a table range. you're following along, there's two different options now. So before, I'm guessing that these were two, this was inside of the actual single dialog box. You would go to pivot table and you have from table from range or from external data source. So that's what those two icons are that you're seeing inside the book. So now they just separated it out to two different ones you're able to choose from. So when you click on it now, you're doing the table and range because that's what we want to use. And that's why you're only seeing those options. So we're going to do new worksheet. So we're going to confirm that the range is sales dollar or sales exclamation point $A $3 through $I $89. And then we're going to go ahead and click OK to create your pivot table. Now you get your pivot table fields that pop up on the right-hand side. So we wanted to click location, position. So location, position, and month. So you should see down here under your rows, they should all show up. Now we're going to drag month to the columns. So now as you can tell, it's changing the way your data is laid out. Now we have the rows with the different locations and the positions. And now over here, we have the months on the right-hand side. Now we're going to go ahead and click on sales. And as you can tell, that knows that we want to sum those values. So it automatically sum those values for you. Now we're just going to rename that worksheet. So go down to your sheet, go to rename. And that's going to be sum of sales by location. After that, we're just going to go ahead and save our file. So as you can tell now, I mean, based off the data that we had off of sales, this was all the different sales by each person. They had the location, the agent, their sales and everything, the month. It's a lot of data to read through. I mean, it makes your job very difficult if you want to sum this up. Yes, you could do what we did before. We could do totals. We could do, average, all this other stuff. But doing the pivot table allows you to look at it a lot easier to see which location maybe made the most money. Was it an agent or was it a manager that made that money? So it allows you to see that data a lot easier and you're able to see your totals without having to do too much work. I mean, you did a couple of clicks and you were able to get all this data for you pretty fast. So using a pivot table for analysis, you can modify at any time by adding and removing fields. You can change the positioning and order of fields. So of course, like I said, we're doing the sum. We were able to check the boxes of what we wanted to show. I mean, we did the location. Maybe we want to see, instead of them being agent or manager, maybe we want to see the actual employee name so we can get more details of who our top seller is. You're able to do a lot more by clicking the different boxes and erasing the fields that you want to see that's more important to you. Formatting the pivot tables. Formatting makes information easier to read and understand. Choose styles from the gallery on the design tab. Choose from layout and style options. Change the number of formatting. So once again, we kind of learned this in intermediate where you're able to design things the way that you want it to look like. Makes it easier. Once again, maybe your company has a way that the data needs to be displayed. So that's where you could go and format this to make this look a little bit easier to read rather than just a bunch of gibberish. So diving into that, we're going to save our file. So file, save as, browse. Make sure you're on your thumb drive, and this is going to be E12D2 sales targets. Now we're going to go back to the sales worksheet. We're going to go back to insert. And now, of course, Microsoft likes to make things easier for you. So we could go to recommended pivot tables. So they have these different things. Some of targets by location, some of sales by location, and all these other ones where Microsoft says, maybe this is the way you want to see your data. So we want to go ahead and select the third option on the left, sum of commissions, sum of sales, and sum of targets by location. So it should be your third option, sum of commissions, sum of sales, and sum of targets by location. And click OK. So once you have that open, on the right-hand side, we're going to uncheck the location from the pivot table box. So now that removes the location. As you can tell, you have a bunch of names. Now we're going to go in and check the position. And that kind of doesn't look right. So now we have Adam, manager, Alexander, agent, but it's kind of just all over the place. They're not summed up together, so it makes it a little bit harder to read. So now we want to drag the position field above the first name. So right now it's doing the first name. We want position to be sorted first. So now it shows you all the agents, and then it shows you the manager. So basically it's taking that first field in those rows to say how we're going to line up our data. Okay. Next, we're going to check the month box to add that field and then remove the first name field by dragging it out of the rows area and onto the worksheet. This is an alternative. So you could take first name here and you could just drag it out. It will remove it, or you could check the box. The reason you would do that is if you have a bunch of fields and you're trying to scroll through and find out where it is, maybe you could just go down to, know what, the data is already selected, and you could just find it in here and drag it out compared to having to use the check mark. So after that, we're going to go to design under the pivot table. So you want to go to this design over here. And we're going to go to pivot table styles. Oh, it should be on your far right. And we want to select the dark blue pivot style dark 20. So you can click the little pop-out dialog box. And we want to go to dark blue. Come on. Dark blue pivot style dark 20. Okay. Now in the values area, so right here in the bottom right, we have values. Click on the sum of commissions and choose value field settings. So you should get this box that pops up. So here for the name, we want to change that to average AVG com. If you click on average, so the next one was clicking on average, it's going to change your name again, and you can just type it in again, AVG com. And then on the number format, we're going to click on that box. And we want to change that to currency. So number format, right here. So all we're doing now, instead of doing the sum of the commissions, we're taking the average of the commissions, and we're just making it, instead of just be random numbers here, we're actually telling it that we wanted to look at it as currency. And once you're done with that, click OK. And now it should look like actually money compared to just regular numbers. And that's only for the average of commissions, because that's the one field we selected. Now we're going to do the same thing for the other two fields. So for the sum of sales, we're going to click the drop down. We're going to go to value field settings. This one is going to be average. And then we're going to do average of sales, AVG. Sales. And the number format is going to be currency once again. And then OK and OK. And then the last one, which is the sum of targets, we're going to change that one. So value field settings. We're going to go to average, AVG, target, number format, and currency. And click OK. Okay. So after that, we're going to go to design. We're going to go to layout and report layout. And we want to go to show an outline form. Okay. And then we're going to rename that worksheet. So at the very bottom down here, we're going to right click and rename. And this is going to be average by position. All right, after that, let's go ahead and save our worksheet. Okay, so filtering a pivot table. So as you can imagine, pivot tables can grow to be very big. There are multiple ways to filter. You can use auto filter, you can add a filter field, or you can add a slicer. Basically, auto filter, Microsoft says we're going to filter it the way we want to. You could do a filter on a certain field. Maybe you only want to see sales from one employee or multiple employees, whatever the case might be, or depending on how you want to slice your data, you're able to use a slicer. Totals and subtotals instantly recalculate after you do the filtering. So filtering a pivot table with auto filter, the auto filter button displays a menu with sorting and filtering options. Filtering with a filter field in a slice. Adding a filter field, drag a field to the filters area. Filtering with slicers, there are menu frames on a worksheet containing all the filtering choices for one field. The highlighted or the selected items are highlighted in the slicer, and that's where you're able to go ahead and make your filtering changes. So getting into that, we're in another file, save as. Go to browse, make sure you're on your thumb drive. And this is going to be E12D3 sales targets. Okay. Let's go ensure the pivot table on the average by position worksheet is selected. So of course, that's the one that we were just in. Drag the location field into the filters area. So we're going to find location. And we're going to just drag that over into filters. Yep, just drag it on over. It should check it once you drag it. Okay. You will now see the field name location in cell A1. So A1 is going to be up here. We're going to click the location filter button where it says all. And now we're just going to select New York. And then click OK. So now that's just going to show you the cells by that single location. So you're filtering off data based on that. Now we're going to go to the sum of cells by location sheet, which is that other pivot table sheet that we have. And we're going to go back inside of our pivot table if you're not in there already. So just click inside of the pivot table area. And we're going to click the position field in the rows area and choose remove. So over here where we have position, we're going to go ahead and click on that and click on remove field. And that takes away that information. Now we're going to go back to pivot table analyze at the very top in the ribbon. We're going to go to filter and we're going to go to insert slicer. And we're going to click the position and click OK. Now you have this slicer window and you can move it around if you click on it. And it shows you the two different positions that you have, agent and manager. So drag the slicer, move it out the way so it's not by your data. Other thing we're able to do is if we go to slicer, so on the top in the ribbon, go to slicer, and here under options, so slicer, and then where are my options if I could see? Slicer tools, and then options. Yeah, it looks like they changed it once again in the latest update. You actually have the slicer size, what they want us to do, and we want to change that from what it currently is. The height, we're going to change that to 1. And for the width, we're changing that to 1.5. So as you can tell, all that's doing is making that slicer a little bit smaller. So of course, if you had a lot of data, maybe you will want it bigger, or you might want it smaller, depending on the size of data that you're working with. So for that slicer, under slicer styles, we want to change that style to light blue, slicer style Dart 5. Yep. So under Dart, it's the last blue one. and then hit OK. So that should make those a little bit darker. After that, we're going to go ahead and click on Agent. And that will just show you the agents by the location. Now we're going to right click on cell E5, Echo 5. Right click. And we're going to go down to, and we're going to choose number format. So number format, if you right click, you're going to get this little pop-up box here. We're going to choose currency, and we're going to select the decimal places to 0. And click OK. As you can tell, that updated all of those number formats. And then if you click on Manager, you will see the numbers for Manager. So, 2 different ways that you're able to sort your data. Of course, you can use a slicer if you would like, or you could do your filters like we did over here. We filtered by the location. Then you can go ahead and select which location you're looking for. Miami, for example, and it's going to show you what those look like. So go ahead and save your worksheet. So creating calculated fields. You can create your own calculations instead of using a function. You can do show values as. You can determine how values display by using comparison operators. Refreshing pivot table data. You must refresh a pivot table after updates have been made to the data. So on that Shell's worksheet, if that data was to change, you would have to go to your pivot table and tell it to refresh. You can select an option to refresh upon opening the file. So that way, if you're referencing external data sources, for example, maybe you have another spreadsheet that has all the data, and that's a different file name. So when they open up just this one that has all the pivot tables, it will automatically refresh once you open up that file. So for me, for example, I send files over to our CFO, especially when it comes to our Verizon bill or our Cox Communications bill. I have one spreadsheet that just has all the data, and I have it using an external table. So whenever he opens up that spreadsheet, it goes out and reads that external table every time. Instead of it being in that same exact file, there's no reason for him to see all the raw data. He could just see the pivot tables. That makes it a lot easier for him. Just like if I send it over to our executive team members that are in charge of different departments, this is what your sales department is spending on international minutes or how much data they're using. I could just send that over to the sales director. They're able to look at that data and call it a day. They don't have to see all the raw data behind it.
Yeah, I know. It's that. But at the end of the day, he just the numbers at the top.
Yep.
That's data. So every time he opens it,
It's going to, if the data has been updated, yes, it will refresh. But when it opens, that's the first thing it's going to do. It's going to go look for new data and refresh it. That way I don't have to manually go in to the actual table or the pivot table and tell it to refresh. Just a little shortcut, make your life a little bit easier. Yes. Yeah, we did a file save as. Or yes, I haven't got there yet. So after we rename that sheet of percent of target, we're going to select in location first, position, and then last name. Yes, the reason you want to do it in a certain order is because that's the way it goes down in the worksheet. If you select a different order, the data is going to look different. So as you could tell, if you look at your worksheet, location is going to be first here because we clicked that first. Next, we have the position, and then we have the last names. So if I uncheck position and location or in last name, and I go last name first and then position, you could see where it just kind of makes it multiple. So you want that, in the order that it makes a little bit more sense, easier to read. Yes, you could just drag them up and down. Okay. Now we're going to add sales and targets to the value area. So you could drag sales and target over to values. So now you should see that the values are populating for each one of those locations. And as you could tell in the columns, values are already added in here. Because that's what we want to see is those values in those columns. So now in the values area, we're going to adjust the value field settings of each to currency with no decimals and use the custom names. And we're on page 308, number 6. So we just did that in the last exercise. You click on the drop down, value field settings. We're changing it to currency for the number format with 0 decimal places. Either one. Value field settings. And we're going to change that number format to currency with 0 decimal places. Clicking OK on that box. And we're changing the name. And we want total sales. And click OK. And then we want to do the same thing for the sum of target. Value field settings. Number format, currency, 0 decimals. OK. Okay. So after we have those two fields renamed and changed over to currency, we're going to go back to our pivot table. And the ribbon, we're going to go to pivot table analyze. We're going to calculations. We're going to choose the field items in sets. We want to go to calculated field. And if you want to follow along, we're on number 8 on page 308. So for the name, we're doing percent of target. The formula, we're going to do equal. Oh, sorry. We're going to select cells. We're going to click on insert field. And then we're going to do the division bar, so the slash. And we're going to select target. And we're going to click on insert field. So all we're doing here is we're making our own calculation field, and we're telling it to take the sales divided by target. And we're going to click OK. Okay. So what that does is divide the sales by the target. So what you mainly see is just all ones, except for a couple of two, or you have 1, 2 here. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on cell D4, Delta 4. And we're going to open the value field settings. What was that? Okay. So for the custom name, we're going to type in total percent of target. And then we want to select and change the number format to percentage. So we're going to go to number format. And we want to go to percentage. With 2 decimal places. And then we're going to hit OK. And hit OK again. So now our data should actually have some percentages, which once again, this is very helpful for our salespeople. They like to see how much of their actual sales and target did they meet. Did they go over budget or did they go under budget? So now we're going to collapse the buttons for agent and manager labels to display location positions only. As you can tell, that does it for your whole table. You don't have to go to each location. If you do it at the top, it will collapse it for each location automatically. So now we're going to change the pivot style table to dark blue, pivot style dark 20. So once again, we're going up to the ribbon and going to design. We're doing a drop down under the styles, and we're finding our dark blue pivot style dark 20. And we're selecting that. Okay. Now we're going to go to the sales sheet, worksheet on the bottom. We're going to select cell H7. So new sales information has come in for Sarah McMillan for July. So we're going to enter the new information. So in cell H7, we're typing in 12900, 12900, and pressing enter. So that has updated her sales. So now she should be above her target. She should be over the 100%. So now we're going to return to our percent of target worksheet. And I'm just going to show you guys don't have to do this. But if we go to Sarah, she's in New York. If I go down to New York, I go to manager. Yep. So I just clicked to expand it so I can actually see the data. So if I can read, so there she is right now. It still shows that she's under. She's only at 102. But if we go to our pivot table analyze up here, and we go to refresh under data, and we go to refresh all, this should update your data to show now she's at over 106 when she was at 102. So even though we updated it in the sales tab, it did not automatically update our pivot table. And then go ahead and save. Okay, so creating pivot charts. These are based on the pivot table data. So of course you have all the raw data. Sometimes people like to look at an actual chart. The value area fields display as data series on the chart. The row labels become the axis, and the column labels become the chart legend. So you can filter off of the pivot charts to see the different rows and different columns of your data. Once again, makes things a lot easier than having to when you do your regular worksheet charts. So, diving into that, we're going to do another file save as. Go to browse. So this is going to be E12D5. And hit save. So now we're going to start off by the sum by location sheet. So find your worksheet, sum by location. Should look something like this. We're going to select the pivot table. We're going to go over to design. Oh, sorry. We're going to go to pivot table analyze. And then we're going to go to tools on the bottom, and we're going to go to pivot chart. Click OK to insert the clustered column chart. So this is the custom column. We want to go ahead and click OK to insert that. Drag the chart directly below the pivot table. So once again, you're able just to drag that on over. And the slicer, click the multi-select button. So once again, this is our slicer up here. We're going to click on the multi-select button here. And click Agent to display both positions in the chart. So they both should turn blue. So Agent and Manager should be blue. Okay. Now we're going to go to the sales worksheet. So find your sales worksheet on the bottom. We're going to go to insert. We're going to go to the charts. And we're going to go to pivot chart. And in the create pivot chart dialog box, we're just going to click OK. So you should get this new box this new worksheet that pops up. And the pivot chart fields pane. So right over here, pivot chart fields. Remember before that was the other name. Yeah, pivot fields. We're going to add location to the axis. So as you notice down here, also these field names have changed. So we're going to do location to axis, month to legend, and commission to the values. So as you can tell here, it actually made you a pivot chart or a pivot table, and then you have your pivot chart. So now you should at least have this type of chart. In the pivot chart legend, click on the month and click remove the check mark from September. So we're going to click this drop down here, or for month. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong place. Over here on this month in the actual pivot chart, so right here under this pivot chart, we're going to click where it says month. We're going to remove September and click OK. So uncheck it, hit OK. So now you should tell that month went away. We're going to rename this worksheet. So right on the bottom, we're going to right click on it. Go to rename. And this is going to be commissions by month. And once you're done with that, we're going to drag this chart underneath the pivot table. And then we're going to save and close our workbook.